And we're live. Welcome back to another episode of Blockbuster Underground. See, I'm even rocking the duds today. This was what I called the alternate jersey when we worked there. Yeah, this was in the era of the black shirts. We finally got to the jeans after 30 years. Well, who was keeping track anyway? So we're doing a full-on breakdown, spoiler discussion of WandaVision today. So first thing we're going to do, I have no notes for this. This is just basically going to be from my impressions of today's episode, as well as a little bit on what's come already in the previous couple episodes. Today's episode, though, holy shitballs. It was something else. I was not expecting that as an episode. I messaged my buddy, saw it before me, and he messaged me, and he's like, dude, what an episode. I'm like, I haven't seen it yet. I'm just waking up. And then the minute the episode started, I was like, holy shit, dude. He's like, I know. Craziness. Actually, you know what? First three episodes have been spoiled all to death already. Let's just kick into today's episode because a lot of shit went down. As anyone who's been watching this is aware, it's Wanda and Vision in basically living through different eras of sitcoms. Very strange. First episode was the 50s, second episode was the 60s, third episode was the 70s. We were supposed to probably get the 80s this time, but they kind of flipped it on us. And this episode today was basically everything that's been happening thus far from the other side of whatever Wanda's doing in La La Land there. So episode started off with, obviously the recap of what's been happening, culminating with Monica getting blasted out of the illusion and the sword trucks all pulling up in front of her at the end of the last episode. So this episode starts off with Monica sitting in a chair undusting. It's basically the snap that Banner does to bring everybody back is what happens to her. So we see her basically reintegrate from nothingness in a hospital, and she's sitting in a hospital room, and the bed next to where she's sitting is empty, and all hell's breaking loose, obviously, because everybody just came back from nowhere. Like in Spider-Man Far From Home, it was funny in a way because the marching band suddenly appears in the middle of a basketball game and everyone's running into each other, and it's like, buffoons galore, clown car sort of shit. So this time, though, everyone's in a panic. They're like, what the fuck just happened? Obviously, because a bunch of people just reintegrated out of thin air after being gone for 5 years. So Monica's running around through the hospital, looking around, trying to figure out what the hell's going on. And she finds the doctor, some doctor she knows, and the doctor's like, what are you doing here? What's going on? She's like, where's my mom? She goes, she was supposed to be discharged this afternoon. Like, what the hell's happening? And the doctor looks at her and she goes, your mom died 2 years ago. And she's like, you've been gone for almost 5, you've been gone for 5 years. And holy, it hits her like a ton of bricks. She's like, holy shit. The doctor was like, yeah, her cancer came back. And she was like, and she died 2 years ago. And Monica's like, how can that be? 5 seconds ago, I was sitting next to her and we were going home this afternoon. Complete confusion. So she ends up going back to work right away for Sword. And you see her going to the base and she meets with the director. And she's saying, she's like, where's everybody else? And they're like, yeah, well, they all took time off to go and see their families and everything after what happened. So he's like, you sure you're up to coming back to work already? You can take time if you need to. And she's like, no, I'm good to go. And then he tells her, oh, by the way, you're grounded. No extraterrestrial missions. And she's like, well, who the hell said to do that? And he's like, your mother did. That was one of her last wishes, is that when you came back, that you not risk your life in some crazy outer space mission sort of thing. So he's explaining basically what Sword has become now, and she's like, oh yeah, it was the same before. The galaxy has their bad guys and their allies. A definite nod to Carol, because this is obviously, for those who don't realize it, I'm not sure who there would be that doesn't, but Monica is the little girl from Captain Marvel, the little daughter who's like 10, 11 years old. That's her now growing up. Because remember, we're jumping ahead to 2023, I think it would have been, in Endgame when everything finally culminated. So this is obviously Monica growing up to be adult Monica. One thing we don't know yet, though, is if she has any superpowers yet. I'm thinking she might, because with what Wanda does to her, most humans wouldn't be able to survive that without at least 6 or 8 months in traction. We'll get to that in a second, though, because that's another cool thing they show from another angle. This episode was all about the show as it is right now, but from another viewpoint, which was a real neat way to twist it, especially like mid-season like it is, without keep on going and going and going. Because I know some people are like, what the fuck is going on with these sitcoms? When will they ever end? Like, what's the point to it? Like, progress the story a bit. Let us know what's going on. And they gave us that in spades today. So she goes back to work and she gets grounded. So no extraterrestrial flights for her. So the director's like, well, I've got a missing person situation the FBI needs our help with. And she's like, why would they need our help with a missing person thing? And he's like, trust me, they asked for you specifically because this is some weird shit going on. So she takes off to Westview, drives down there, arrives at Westview, and there's a cop car. And you can see the town in the distance, the sign saying Westview. And there's a cop car there with a couple of cops standing there. And Randall Park, Jimmy Woo from Ant-Man and the Wasp is back. So he's back. I love that guy. He's hilarious. He meets Monica, and he's like, okay, this is really a strange situation. He's like, come here and tell me if this makes sense. And he walks over to the cops and he goes, excuse me, officer, can you tell me what you told me about Westview? And the cop's like, there is no Westview. Like, it doesn't exist. What are you talking about? And Monica's like, okay, so you're saying there's no Westview, New Jersey, even though and she's like looking right at the sign fucking saying Westview. And you can see the town in the distance. But these cops, for some reason, don't even think it exists. And they're like, and he's like, well, where are you from? And the cop's like, Eastview. Like, what the hell is going on? So it's almost like whatever's happening is affecting anything within a radius of it. So anyone that comes even close to the kind of bubble that has been created here, either by Wanda or who knows who else, is immediately affected in that they lose all memory of anything. So Monica goes back to her truck and she grabs a drone. And this is cool because this is the drone in episode 2 where Wanda found the toy helicopter in the rose bushes. And this is literally whatever goes into the bubble gets reinterpreted as something else. So like the beekeeper, we'll get to that in a second. And the drone basically turned into a toy helicopter because Monica flies it up and keeps going. And as it hits the barrier, it just whoosh, it's gone. So her and Jimmy Woo, Randall Park, walk up to closer and they see this almost looks like the staticky sort of look on a TV screen back in the old days. But it's almost like a hazy sort of shimmer. And she walks up to it, sort of touches it, and it's like literally like an energy field. And Jimmy behind her is like, careful, Monica, don't, careful. And she pushes a little further, and the next thing you know, she goes, and she's gone, sucked in. And that's when everything goes back crazy. It goes to 24 hours later, and there's a truck driving down towards the location. And it ends up it's Kat Dennings, Darcy from Thor, with a few other guys. And there's like a artificial intelligence guy and physio, something, all different like fields of expertise. And hers being astrophysics kind of thing. So they arrive on site, and she's like taking some readings, and she's like, man, there's a lot of like micro radiation emanating off that field, but there's something else in it. And she grabs this old spectrometer thing. I don't know where the fuck they came up with that. Like, it was just sitting around, I guess. But old spectrometer thing was like the old timey sort of tube TV lens on it. So she tunes that into she's like, it's almost like a broadcast frequency. So she tunes it in and she starts watching the Wanda show along whatever we were watching in the last 3 episodes, just like a sitcom. So she's sitting there, and she was at the end of episode 1 when they panned back from the credits, and you saw someone sitting at a desk taking notes. That was Darcy. So she starts watching all the footage, and they start matching up all the people that are interacting with Wanda, like the Hearts in the first episode, the boss from work and the wife, and everybody has they're able to ID everyone. Like they've got the name, and they're like, this is this character, Herb is this character, and he's actually this guy from, you know, this town. So they've got all the names of all the people in the town, I guess, up on this board. Agnes is up there too, but Agnes for some reason does not have an ID card. So is she still going to be Agatha Harkness in so much as the Salem witch, who in the books trained Wanda and eventually got killed by Wanda, but I'm not sure if that's going to happen. But yeah, so everyone's up on the board except Agnes doesn't have an ID and Dottie's not up there. And at the beginning of the episode, Randall Park says, you know, I've got one of my witness protection people is stuck in there. And is that going to be Ralph, the mystery husband of Agnes, who's no one's seen yet anywhere? The theory is that Ralph is either Mephisto, or he's now possibly this witness protection guy that Jimmy's supposed to be taking care of that got sucked into Westview as well. Dottie could also, they're saying, possibly be Mephisto, or Nightmare, or Swarm are the 3 possibilities. Swarm, I'm thinking less so now because the Beekeeper, we get to go back to that as well. The director of S.W.O.R.D. figures, you know, because they're sending drone after drone after drone, and they're just all getting sucked into the vortex. So he's like, well, what if we went under the town through the sewer system and then tried to infiltrate it that way to try to, because they're all trying to find Monica. And at one point, Darcy's watching the show, and she's like, holy shit. And she points to her, and there's freaking Monica sitting on a park bench in the middle of one of the episodes reading a newspaper. And then the next episode, Darcy's like, she's got moved up to a talking part. The evolution of the old sitcom days, I swear to God. Same with soap operas, I guess. But so they try to send the beekeeper. They got a guy in a hazmat suit, basically, is what it is. And a lot of people figured that was the case to begin with. It was either that or it was going to be an AIM soldier with the kind of suits they had in the comic books back in the day. But the hazmat suit makes more sense because of the radioactivity. Because they're saying it's not dangerous levels of radioactivity yet. But so they try to send this guy in through the sewers, and he's like crawling on all fours, getting the. And as it doesn't make difference if you're up or down. You see the barrier, and he starts crawling through it. And as he crawls through it, his hazmat suit turns into a beekeeper suit with bees flying around him. So when he comes out of the sewer grate, obviously it's the same scene where Wanda was like, no, and rewound everything, but we don't see that. It's really kind of bizarre. So they basically cut from that to what happened? The hell happened next? The beekeeper went off, and then Darcy's watching the show, and it's back to the part where Wanda's giving birth to the twins, and it ends up with Monica saying Ultron killed Pietro, and that whole scene where Witch goes fucking like death stare from like howdy doody sitcom mom to absolutely like, I'm gonna kill you. And the cool thing is, as Darcy's watching it, it glitches right at the part where Vision walks in. But it glitches so you don't see what happened to Monica. But then it glitches, and then the next shot, literally like that, is the Vision and Wanda sitting on the couch with the kids. And the credits roll. And Darcy's like, wait a second. And rolls it back and glitches again. And she's like, this isn't right. And then all of a sudden you hear the sirens going off, and they pause the replay and they run outside, and it's Monica just gotten thrown out of the vortex, and they pan back to the TV and it kind of goes in and goes widescreen again, and it starts to show you exactly what happened. And Wanda's basically like saying, you know, you said Ultron. How do you know that name? Who are you? What are you doing? And Monica's trying to talk her way out of it. And Wanda's getting madder and madder and madder. And she's like, you're not my friend. You're not my neighbor. Who are you? You don't belong here. And you see her start conjuring up the red Scarlet Witch magic. And the next thing you know, wham, knocks her through you see it all too. You knocks her through a wall, through the fence, through a field, and then out through, when we saw in the last episode where she breaches the illusion and goes flying and lands on the ground. But holy shit, she got knocked for a loop. And the next thing you know, Wanda's just uses her magic and fixes the hole in the wall so it doesn't look like anything ever happened. And then it cuts back and she's back in front of the kids, you know, at the end of the last episode 3, when Vision comes in and he's like, where's Geraldine? She's like, oh, don't worry, honey, she went home. And she turns around and sees him, and Vision looks like a zombie, like he did when Thanos tore the stone out of his head. Like gray eyes, big hole in his head, just like a zombie, basically. And she's like, oh, for a second, and then blinks and looks again, and he's back to normal. So there's a definite glitch in the Matrix going on here. I don't know what the hell is happening. In the beginning of the episode, too, when Darcy first sees Vision, she's like, wait a second, he's dead. And we're not talking like blip dead. We're talking dead. Like, what the fuck is going on here? And like, it's a crazy episode. And it basically, how the fuck did it wrap up? Jesus. Basically wrapped up around there where they've now got to figure out how the hell to get her out of there. They also show the scene where it's Jimmy on the radio, because Darcy comes up with the idea of we can broadcast a radio signal in on the same frequency that the show is broadcasting on. When she's near a radio, we might be able to break through. So we see that whole thing and it fails. And then there's the beekeeper thing. So this episode really connected the dots to what we've been seeing so far, and just makes you wonder even more now what the fuck is going to happen next, because we know it's going to be a bad ending. We can guarantee that. But how they're going to continue on with this? Because Wanda basically says to Vision afterwards, she's like, I've got everything under control now. It's all okay. And when Monica gets blasted out of the vortex, she's lying there on the ground. She's going, it's all Wanda. It's all Wanda. It's her doing all of this. And I think that's bullshit. I think there's something else behind this that's driving her to do it. Because otherwise, like, you know, she'd have more control over the whole thing. She could decide exactly what happens. Whereas it almost seems like there's things that are popping into her reality that are just not jiving and cracking the Matrix all the time. Like the Hart's dinner where he started choking, the toy helicopter, the red blood on Dottie's hand when everything else was black and white. Like that was totally Pleasantville. But yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see where this goes. Apparently the final episode of the season is going to have a post-credit scene. So stick around for that. Obviously, always with Marvel, there's a post-credit scene somewhere. I'm surprised we haven't actually gotten one yet, but, you know, we also didn't get a commercial this time. Interesting. Probably because this episode felt like a completely different show. Like, I started watching, and I'm like, what? This is WandaVision? Like, okay. It felt more like an episode of X-Files, quite honestly, which is cool, because we needed to start having some of this explained to us without keep on going with the sitcoms, because it's just like, you know, treading water in a way where we know something's going on. Like, at least give us some solid, tangible proof towards what our theories are, which this episode did in spades. So it's going to be really cool to see where this goes from now. Yeah, at the end, it's basically Monica saying that it's all Wanda. But I think, like, no. She has control of it to a degree, but there's something else that's Like Darcy at one point was like, "Who's editing the feed? It can't be Wanda, because how would she know they're even watching?" And this, like the scenes where Monica got blasted out, she's like, "There's somebody else working on this and editing this that we're seeing. So somebody's tapping into the broadcast and in some way manipulating Wanda." The other thing that's really weird is, and nobody really that I've seen has noticed, is all the time they're saying, "For the children, for the children, for the children." We have yet to see a single kid anywhere in that town. Anywhere. Well, other than Tommy and Billy now, the twins. But other than that, no one's out. I've never seen a single child anywhere. And they're like, "Oh, well, we're doing this for the raising children money for the kids, for this and this and that." I don't know. There's something screwy going on. Another theory I've heard is that everybody in Westview is a magic user, and that somewhere in the town, Doctor Strange, Brother Voodoo, and Cleo are all running around trying to crack the shell and get Wanda out of there. But it obviously is very apparent that Wanda doesn't want to go anywhere. She's happy with her vision, as long as he doesn't look like a rotted corpse, and her two little kids. So, there's going to be something drastic's going to happen. And she might very well end up being the villain of this. She's going to probably end up fighting Sword, because they're trying to get her out of there while she just wants to stay in. So it's like a reverse Matrix kind of thing in a way. But it's going to be a hell of an end of the season. There's 9 episodes total. Next week's episode 5. So we're getting to the nitty gritty of this one, and it should hopefully have a pretty substantial and satisfying payoff. And the best part is 3 weeks after the end of WandaVision, we get Bucky and Falcon and Winter Soldier. That starts on the 19th of March. So we're getting a Marvel dose finally. Bad bloody time. There's still no word with Black Widow. I was going to talk about this last episode yesterday, but they're saying now they might do the premium access like they did with Mulan and charge you like $30 extra on top of your subscription to watch Black Widow. I hope not, because that failed so horribly for Mulan. Granted, Mulan wasn't a very good movie, but $30 for Black Widow, I'd like that on Blu-ray, please, on my shelf over with my other Marvel films, not a windowed streaming opportunity kind of thing. No. I'm also probably not going to be going to a theater anytime in May or June, thereby negating that option. So we're probably looking at having to wait for Blu-ray, whatever that is. With the way they're fast-tracking movies now, who knows how quick. March 18th, we're getting the Snyder Cut of Justice League. Only on HBO Max. There'll probably be some sort of streaming PVOD rental option like they did with Wonder Woman, where they charge you $30 to get the movie for 48 hours. And you can binge watch it over and over and over and over again because that was such a great movie. Not. But yeah, that was another video. Look back a couple, I think. I did a review for that. What am I talking about? It was that good. But anyway, so that's my 2 cents worth on the whole WandaVision situation for right now. Anyone who hasn't been watching it, what are you waiting for? It's great. It's great. It's totally not what you would expect from Marvel, but amazing acting. Paul Bettany is a great comedic actor, I must say. It's astounding. But and Lizzie Olsen, definitely the most talented Olsen twin, or whatever two of them twins. Thank God she's not a triplet, but amazing. We're talking Emmy caliber acting from both of them for this part. And 9-episode run. It's only going to be the 1 season. I'm pretty sure. I don't see they're going to stretch this into season 3 of WandaVision. We dig up Vision's body one more time. No, I don't think so. This will probably be a one and done 9-episode run, but it's definitely setting up for some cool stuff that's going to happen down the road in the MCU, and I can't wait to see how they're going to pull it off. Anyhow, leave your comments down below, like, subscribe, and tell all your friends. We'll catch you next time on the Blockbuster Underground new channel. Ciao for now.